Suddenly I feel important, like I walk to the microphone and people just kind of take their seats. I must be middle-aged. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks everybody for coming. I want to thank the Imagine Fund of the University of Minnesota System, which provided the funding for this series of events. I want to make sure to thank Jim Perlman, without whose energy I think the Poet Laureate program would not have certainly thrived as much as it did and has for more than a decade. I want to thank you all for coming. And most specifically now I want to thank Jess Morgan of the Duluth Poetry Chapter, who will be our MC for the evening, taking us through what I'm calling a teaser poet, a member of the Duluth Poetry Chapter, then a laureate, then a poet selected by the laureate, then a brief break, then another teaser poet, a laureate, and a poet selected by the laureate, and then lots and lots of very cool conversation. Sound good? Thank you.
Wow, I am so surprised to find you all here. Okay, yeah, maybe some of you will get that joke. We'll introduce our poet laureate later. But my name's Jess. I've been organizing with the Duluth Poetry Chapter, and it's a chapter of the League of Minnesota Poets. So that's a nonprofit that has chapters all over the state of Minnesota. The Duluth chapter meets every Sunday at Dovetail. So we try to keep it very open table. So it's really about like connecting with each other, seeing what everyone wants to bring as individuals. We really want to kind of create a space where if someone's really excited about an event, they can bring that energy and we can kind of help create it together. So we're kind of just like a group of individuals that want to do this, but also a chapter of the nonprofit, but we're keeping kind of like a little bit more of a casual format versus like strict nonprofit rules for our chapter. We were at Pride this last year. We brought some poets to the Pride Fest in the Twin Cities, which was a lot of fun to hand out some information about a contest. So check out the League if you're interested in any of those things, or see our table later for more info. Before we start with our featured poets tonight, or the laureates, we have Sarah who's going to read. Sarah comes to the chapter meetings just about every Sunday. She is a chaplain and mental health provider. So yeah, she'll give us some poems before we continue with the rest of the poets. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome tonight. This is the only poem that I'm going to introduce, but there's a local statistic where if you, at the deepest point of Lake Superior, if you set the Empire State Building on the floor of it, there would be 8 stories of water above that. So this poem references that statistic, or that factoid. This is called Love Stories. There would be 8 stories of water on top of the Empire State Building if they set it down on the floor of Lake Superior, a submerged pillar under 8 waters of gallons, 8 levels of freshwater sea. 8 is the number of times I counted your cycles of breath tonight, watched your chest gently move, your soft eyelashes fluttering as we both started to drift off, a sea of sleep calling us in to close. Hundreds of times I've kissed you over the past few weeks, crossing paths in the kitchen, pausing to breathe you in, your sea storm eyes drawing me as water, stories of love sighed within seconds. I have said this one is it, this love we design. As we celebrated our 8th year, we vowed again to put each other first, deciding to fall in love on repeat, as if the first time was just practice before deaths, bankruptcies, and surgeries. Now our years blend as my coffee swirls, milky galaxies mapped with your promises. I would swim down thousands of stories to the floor of our mighty lake to find one stone to replicate my heart, fluttering for you, love vast as a sea of stars. and this one is called The Big Fork. Today belongs to the swans, trumpets exploding mightily overhead as the canoe cuts through rice paddies, water the color of oolong tea, minnows flitting under the surface, scattered schools of steady students. I asked myself for a sign. It presented itself in the resilience of sturdy lily pads, surfacing like emerald Teflon beds as I curve my way through. If we are ready now, we are always ready. I hear your laughter bounce in the breeze as the eruption of wings clap. My beloved is the air I breathe. As we are here in this holy sanctuary, limbs stretch as we roll forward on. And finally, this is called Lost 40. The tall trees whisper to the sun as they sway toward my shadow, then shy away from it. Hide and seek with these majestic guides for wild creatures, lumbermen, and me. I've been contemplating my life this walk, washing up and shaking out thoughts of suicide and triumph, swirling around in my spirit. Each path leads to another option, another reason to keep going. I decide to commit to survival for today. My body is breaking down more often now. I can see my own aging when I look at my friends' children. I'm relatable because I have wisdom, not because of similarities. I've landed on this transitional plane. I sway in the wind as these mighty giants. Someone told me I would know I was getting older and wiser when I no longer cared about what other people thought of me. I think I must have arrived because people have started asking me what I feel about them. I'm honest yet kind. We've almost learned how to do that for each other, practice accurate empathy as we peel into each other's hearts, as we take root and continue to grow another arm, then another, reaching for the sky for semblance as these lost and mighty trees. Thank you.
So we're going to pass it off to tonight's Poet Laureate. So if we could welcome Bart Sutter, who has their book with them. So surprised to find you all here. So it just sounds like it just came out 2 days ago. So let's give Bart a big hand.
Thank you. The Duluth Poet Laureate program was created at just the right time for me. After living here for 10 years and feeling deeply at home and benefiting from the efforts of other writers, I've been looking for a way, as Robert Bly once put it, to do something for the hive. With the first crown of laurel leaves perched on my fat head, I organized, alongside a talented board, a series of poetry readings in what were then unusual venues, such as Hartley Nature Center and the Labor Temple. The laureates who followed had their own ideas, and over time, we expanded the reach of poetry in the community and provided openings for many voices to be heard. So thanks to all who have served on this project in any capacity whatsoever. Duluth has been good to me and good for me. I'm going to say thank you in the best way I know how by reading 3 poems that rose directly from my experience here. Since this is a retrospective celebration, these are poems some of you may have heard before. If you'd like to hear new poems, you might come to the Quaker Meeting House at 7 p.m. on Thursday, October 27, when Sheila Packa and I will do a double publication reading for our new books. Good to see you there. So, I'll begin with An Apple Branch, a poem in rhyme and meter, because I felt we ought to have at least one of those, and I'm just the boy for the job. It's also a love poem, and we've had one already, but you can't have enough at a poetry reading. Also, because the greatest gift Duluth has brought me is my beloved wife, Dorothea Diver. An apple branch. The trees were dripping rain that day, but then a gusty wind blew all the ragged clouds away and let the light break in. You cracked wet branches off the crab with apples like bright bells. You wore off-white while I was drab. We'd walk through psychic hells to reach this quiet, sunshot room, this terrifying hour when we announced our joy and doom, trembling like flowers. We'd broken sacred vows before. There were no guarantees. If we grew sore, afraid, or bored, who'd see that we kept these? And still, we stood in silence there, exchanged a pair of rings. I loved your face and short, dark hair. I loved your everything. Your girls stood up with us. Then we lit 4 candles bright. I'd never seen a family blend. I prayed for help, for light. We stuck those candles in soft sand around a heart-shaped rock, and as we stood there holding hands, our friends began to talk. Jean said that sonnet by Shakespeare, The Marriage of True Minds. Some folks were snuffling with tears, but I was feeling fine. Then Robert made the whole room laugh. You two look good together. The past was just a lot of chaff, blown off by windy weather. My brother sang a poem by Burns. Oh, my love's like a red, red rose. Sweet thought. But marriage vows are stern, and how they hold, God knows. God knows I would have winced and blanched if I'd forefelt the pain or seen beyond my half a hunch the trouble we had claimed. We cleared out all the cards and gifts, the withered wildflowers, and drove away to find out if the life we dreamed was ours. It seemed that only death could staunch the music in my brain. Oh, my love's like an apple branch that glistens in the rain. I've lived... I had a neighbor lived across the alley for quite a number of years who was raised on the coast of Australia, surfing, soaking up the sun, and complaining about living in Duluth in our weather. And he told me at least once, you people are like squirrels. You semi-hibernate for 7 months, and then you run around like maniacs getting ready for winter again. So sometimes I think of this poem as my answer to the Australian. A taste for ptarmigan. Do you know ptarmigan? It's like a grouse, but white and winter. We don't see them here. Farther north, farther north. On December 1st, it snowed a foot. On the 2nd, it snowed 2 more. Then it quit and turned off cold, so cars refused to start and people just sat still. Muskox weather, day by day. The nights were spooky too. Boom! You'd hear the ice crack on the lake, or worse, the rafters in your house. Nails popped, the screws came loose. You still had windows, but what could you see with frost flowers grown fantastically opaque? New Year's Day, it snowed an inch. On the 2nd, we got 2. On the 3rd, 3 inches more. I said to the wife, what's the use? She passed the sugar bowl. I sprinkled some over my flakes, repulsed because the crystals fell like you know what. But I needed the oomph to shovel the roof. I got right down to shingles. That night, a blizzard hit. Everywhere I looked white. Salt, sheets, the tablecloth, the fish in my muyaka. Open the door, you'd close it quick. Snowy owls on the rooftops, snow leopards in the streets. Crows had fled the country, replaced by ptarmigan. I grabbed the 410 and blasted one. The oven still worked, so we seasoned the bird, and I'll say this, it wasn't bad. Not bad at all. Tasted a little like chicken, with a hint of juniper. Our hair was turning white. The wife was fading, pale, her brown eyes going gray. One morning, gazing down on her in bed, I thought she looked so pitiful and snug. I said, "You might as well stay in your drift." I brewed her a cup of tea, but didn't add any cream. I brought it to her nice and hot, and dark as garden earth we turn up in the spring. She reached out a ghostly hand and said, "Baby, come on inside." She treated me so sweet that I saw fireworks and lost all track of time. When I woke up, the robins sang and kids were playing catch. Neighbors came to lunch on the lawn. The wife was toasty brown. By nightfall, though, I longed for a hockey game. And leafing through the calendar, I daydreamed flakes and drifts and felt a strange affection for the ice cubes in my drink. Thank you, and I'll finish with this long-line free verse poem. The protagonist of this poem is a Russian-American immigrant, and I thought, well, it will be interesting, given the situation in Eastern Europe right now, to feature some of the highlights of Russian culture that show up in this particular poem. Maybe give us all something to think about. The new clerk at Barnes & Noble recites for me in Russian. Approaching the counter to pay for a scarlet notebook that looks to me Russian, with gold filigree. Confident I shall compose great Rachmaninoff, astounding Tchaikovsky concertos of poetry in such an extravagant tablet. I seem to be hearing things. Does the new brunette clerk have an accent? Indeed, she does. Do svidaniya, she does. Perestroika, she does. She is middle-aged, slim, and intense. I like your accent, I say. Are you Russian? Yes, she declares, that I am. The manager intercedes, introducing me with a flourish, with my provincial title, hard-earned. This is Barton Sutter, Poet Laureate of Duluth. I flush with provincial pride. And this, the manager says, opening her hand to her clerk and closing her eyes to recite, is Irina Alexandrovna Milosodova. I am destroyed, completely eclipsed. Imagine to have a name like a compound, complex sentence straight out of Dostoevsky. Who could mistreat? Who could insult a woman with such a name? For a name like that, we doff our fur caps and compete to surrender our seats in the sleigh. For a name like that, the red carpet unrolls in the snow and we cover our hearts for the Queen. Still, I manage to blurt, is it true what they say about Russians and poetry? Of course, smiles Irina Alexandrovna Milosodova. Yes, it is true. Then would you please, I request, my English already falling apart, to recite me a poem in your language? Of course, she agrees, and stiffens her already heart-stopping posture. Out of her mouth like smoke comes the Slavic buzz of a poem that my poor American brain entertains as the most profound nonsense. The disheveled doves in zoot suits, the zoos on the brink, the cross-country double whiskeys, you think shoveled rinks and loved skates, pairs of pink strident hacksaws. On she goes, this arena, reciting with passion this poem that she knows. And the roof of the store draws back, retracts. So we see a samovar, big as the Goodyear blimp, floating above us. The tea nearly ready, and I can smell chocolate besides. Angels and archangels ascend and descend through the steam, singing hosannas. Anna Karenina throws herself on the tracks, and packs of black wolves streak off through the snow as Irina Alexandrovna Milosodova recites Russian verse. A rumba line of customers is pressing close behind me, leaning in to hear and grin. And here is the foreign language of poetry I longed for in the tiny, tight-ass towns where I grew up, where all of us sat all over ourselves and strangled every operatic impulse, every heart-sick desire, every extravagant longing for life. Finally, Irina concludes and gives credit with shining black eyes. Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin. Pushkin. I want to leap over the counter and kiss her full on the mouth. I want to bite both her cheeks. I want to march her around on my shoulders. But this is America, the Midwest. And I'm Swedish besides. So I don't. I reach for her hand and shake it in my best Russian manner, inventing this as I go, shaking and shaking with, can I say, vigor? Would that be okay? Shaking her very nice hand with great vigor, yes, because I am happy. So good. Thanks to you very much to make your acquaintance. And thanks to you.
So one of the cool things about this three-part Poetry Laureate series is that all of the poet laureates have selected a poet to feature each time. So we're gonna invite our next poet up here. So let's give a big poetry snap welcome to our featured poet today, Jason. Let's welcome him up here. Claps, snaps, all of the above.
Thanks, everyone. It's so good to be here, seeing familiar faces, unfamiliar faces in this beautiful venue, which I always love coming up here. I feel like I'm in a castle, looking out over somebody's kingdom. All right, so I asked Barton to share his poems with me that he was going to read, and I chose 3 that I felt complemented those. Though you're going to see that my poems are more kind of like shadows that his poems cast. They're a little on the darker side. The first one, I'll do them in the same order. So this is a book of mine that came out in 2020, right when the pandemic happened, and it just went into that black hole of the pandemic. Oh, hey guys, my brother and his husband are back there. All right, so this is kind of this one complements the love poem to Barton's wife, but it's not about her. Sorry, purely platonic. Yeah. No, so this book, I should say, it's called Rose and Blood. It's some of you are familiar with it, many of you are probably not. It's in 2 voices. The first half is Rose Murtha. She is a 16-year-old girl who grew up in Proctor, and it's just they're just poems about her daily life. And then the second half is William Blood, who's a fellow, he's retired, working class, and he's just starting to kind of discover poetry in his later years, and has started writing it to kind of process some, PTSD and other things he's gone through in his life. So this is a poem he wrote about his I'll just read it. It's called Those Years. Us in that tiny apartment together in that run-down town, Mary and the 2 kids always needing and screaming, and me working after work after work, never a moment to just sit and drool. And the yelling, always endless it seemed, the yelling so much my hands would rise sometimes to strike, and I'd fight them back down again, always, or in my mind or in the muscle. And this afterlife I now call a life is a heaven for it. Mary called every Christmas until her cancer came. The kids are good people, better than ever I was, and sometimes one of them adds a transfer to a flight so he can pay me a visit, show me pictures of his kids. I walk along a crumbling street in a crumbling town, and I feel as worn down and anonymous as the street itself. I cross it natural as a plastic bag in a breeze, and the fighting is a glowing now, a distant fire warming me from another life. All right, that's as close to a love poem as William Blood can get. Sorry. And the second one is in Rose's voice. This is kind of an echo of the weather, the snow poem. All right. But so I'm from the Green Bay area, and Rose she's a Vikings fan, but she watches football with her friend Kat and her Kat's mother on weekends because that's what her Kat's mom likes to do. Anyway, so she's this is after watching a Viking-Packer game. All right. The weather in Green Bay. The center births the ball, and the quarterback cradles it to his chest, steps back, the line bending and groaning around him, and tries to divine the future. The temperature is dropping. Everything is turning to ice. The breath on our lips, the sweat on our fingertips, the blood on the grass. Everything is getting slippery now. The quarterback holds tighter, and soon too will we. Even the earth holding us up threatens to spin out from below when we take off. We are strong and we are nimble and we are running for our lives. All we pray for is a break, to find ourselves open and free, to turn and see the ball coming our way. When that day comes, we'll clutch the slippery message to our hearts. We'll dig in our cleats and take it to the future. But first we must be open. We must be ready to receive. We must run and swerve and not fall down, and warm ourselves with our own heat. Out of the darkness above, a snow begins to fall, into the light and din of the stadium, into the camera's collective vision. We can still see the ball rising behind his head, though the snow is falling thick now all over America. And this is in response to the Russian poem. I won't go into it. It's also, I helped translate this book of poetry by Salim Barakat. He is this fascinating, very, very difficult, he's a Kurdish poet, but he writes in Arabic, kind of the language of the oppressor from a Kurdish point of view. And he basically kind of took over and possessed the language in a way that Paul Celan did, say, with German. It was he's a major Arabic poet who's never been translated into English before. I worked on it with a former student of mine who's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania now, Huda Fakhruddin. And together we were able to figure it out. We kind of cracked the code. So I'm going to read, this is from his long poem, Syria, which is a book-length poem. I'm only going to read like a page and a half. It's about what's happened in Syria recently. It's been years now. Because he's from Syria originally. He's a Syrian Kurd. All right. So you'll see the language it's strange. It's just as strange in the original. All right, or so Huda tells me, because my Arabic is like very bad. That's why I work as a team. All right. Don't ask me to master discipline, to master precision from now on. The stupefied heights have torn their vests, and the stupefied lowlands, like the stupid expanse, are useless from now on. My knees gave out. The sky gave out. The sky will be fixed by the invaders, the defunct sky, the sky, that apron stained by the dribble of blood. This sky, the chant of madness, the nightingale, the dance of the nightingale and the dragon's tail, the sky, the jerking from one belief to another, no proof of the sky after this, no proof of a ladder to it, no ladder to descend from it to the human, O country. Tearing and mending of the soul, the fury of stoning with ancestors' bones, water ancestors, mud ancestors, the fury of stoning with graves deceived of their corpses, the fury of the country, O country. You are the bags in which the disappointed gathers his clothes, his tenacity, and the stolen throats of his children. Legitimacy auctions you off. Certainty is auctioned off within you. You are the auction of shrines looted, graves looted, O country. A survey of property, a castle in ruins, the invaders standing guard. No clarification better than the citation of sand as an exhibit in verdicts. Objections are easy now that we've started receiving horror in rations. In rations, we receive our lives, in iron ladles. Upon inspection, only minor objections to the stubbornness of ruin. Facile and negligible are the objections to divvying you up like cinder. Call it murder. Call it murder by all the names of all your days from now on, O country. Death is too restricting from now on. No vigor will return me to what I was. Not the mountain's loyalty, not the mountainous, not my grandfather the mountain, not my grandmother the forest, not my brothers the narrow roads, not my sisters the rocks burnished in the river stream. No dawn can return me to what I was. No defeat, no victory, no path can return me to what I was. Not the good fathers, not the good lovers, not the good murderers, not the good dead, whom death continues to announce to us as prophets in the kingdoms of the dead. Not even they can return me to what I was. No one will return me to what I was. Sorry. All right, thanks.
So if you're like me, you want 2 minutes to tell the person next to you how great the poem was and possibly to use the restroom. So that's what you have a few minutes to do now, and then we'll come back in about 3, 4, 5 minutes, something like that. Does that make sense? Sound okay? Thank you. So, hi everybody. It's not working? It's not working? Oh, my authority is lost? Yeah, it's like a week into my classes, the same thing. Thanks, everybody. A few more thank yous. Oddly enough, the two people I'm about to thank are talking to each other across the row. The man on the left is Matt Rosendahl, the man at the library who makes this happen. Everybody say thanks, Matt. And the woman on the right is Dr. Tu, the head of my department. My department is the fertile ground in which events like this happen under her leadership. So make sure to thank you, too. We applauded for Matt, but not for Krista. Come on. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, everything. And in the back of the room, when we're done, will be a table where some of the poets will be hanging out, and a table where members of the Duluth Poetry Chapter will be hanging out. And with that, I'll hand it back to Jess. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me on board today. One of the things that I really love about our weekly meetings at the Duluth Poetry Chapter is that we like to create a space for like openness and like kind of mix whimsy with some of like the heavier things that are happening on a week-to-week basis. So we always start our meeting with a check-in, and we ask like, what are some of your high points from the week, or what are some of your low points? And we all kind of go around and do that quickly. So somebody might be like, I got a flat tire this week, but I also adopted a cat, and that was pretty great. So we kind of start our meetings that way. It kind of lets us like lay a few things, set a few things down at the beginning before we go around and share some of our poetry. I recently got my wisdom teeth removed, like just over a week ago. I had 6 of them, which I didn't know was possible, and I also didn't know I had that many going into it, so I was like waking up from the anesthesia, and they're like, you had 6. I was like, wait, what? How did you see 5 on the x-ray? And that's fine. But I wrote this poem that's called, I am getting my wisdom teeth removed, because prior I was very nervous, and I'm trying to get better at letting people take care of me. So the last time I went to sleep when I didn't want to was at my babysitter's, or when I had a 10-page paper to write. Perhaps when they're gone, I'll never try to be smarter than anyone ever again. I'll trust the people around me to take care of me instead of carrying in double time, split meter. Next time I take out a bite out of something, I'll be softer. Next time I go out in public, I'll have my experience displayed in a jar around my neck instead of my old soul or lack of serotonin. When you take a wizard's wand away, they'll still talk to frogs and make a tower more than a tower. When you take a poet's pen away, they'll still find the beauty in everything, a wordsmith architect building a bridge between all souls. Smile at me and show me your teeth, and I'll smile back. The wise remember what they have that can't be taken. So I really, really love living in Duluth. So it's really cool to be here among Duluth Poet Laureates. I really like both that you kind of have some of like the city vibes and some of the small town vibes, maybe sometimes a lot of the small town vibes. But we have this big lake that's really beautiful. And I find that here there's such a good mix of like whimsy and weirdness at the same time of being able to experience like kind of just some like grounding at the same time. I work at We Health Clinic, which right now is really interesting. And I am currently working on like also putting a project together with my partner about, it's like a silly goose circuit. So like it feels really nice to be able to experience some of these whimsy things, but also some of the privileges that we have as Minnesotans. Right now we have access to abortion care. Right now we have access to really good health insurance in the state too. So this is called Safe and Legal in Duluth, Minnesota. We moshed to punk in a shower of bubbles and beer at house shows on Saturday in my city where abortion is legal and safe. Decked out in tinfoil and wearing fish heads, we flail and wail in the annual Smelt Parade in my city where abortion is legal and safe. Our earrings are handmade, we drink coffee that's made downtown, and our music is homegrown in my city where abortion is legal and safe. An underground art collective hauls a piano onto Lake Superior for improvisational opera in my city where abortion is legal and safe. We plow out each other's cars in negative 30-degree temperature snowstorms in my city where abortion is legal and safe. Our lake is as big as the sea. She is grounding, healing, and as comforting as living in a city where abortion is legal and safe. Pro-choice protesters sing the child I babysit happy birthday and feed him cupcakes in my city where abortion is legal and safe. Indigenous land protectors chant and bring their drums when we rally for choice in my city where abortion is legal and safe. A surprising amount of us are queer or trans, and my non-binary heart feels right at home in my city where abortion is legal and safe. I'd like to own goats on the outskirts of town, and will only raise a family or give birth in a city where abortion is legal and safe. Yeah, I'm really thankful to be working in a staff where I have some of the most amazing people that I've ever met working alongside me. I'm there part-time, but some of them are there full-time. Some of them are transitioning into retirement, and we have been working there for 40 years, so it's a really interesting time. But it makes me feel a lot of pride and also security to live in a city where we have access to so many beautiful things like our lake and also healthcare that's really comprehensive. So. Yeah, we're gonna bring on our poet laureate. Thank you. We're gonna invite Bart back on to read some poetry. So let's give some poetry snaps, some poetry claps, and we'll bring them. Wait, what? Sorry. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. We're gonna bring Deb Cooper. Thank you so much. Let's hear from Deb. Poetry snaps for Deb. Poetry claps for Deb. She's gonna do a beautiful job.
That was so funny because do you remember when we read with the symphony and somebody asked if Bart Sutter would stand up and I stood up and then Ellie stood up and I don't know who else might have stood up, but so people get us mixed up a lot. So I have not read poetry in my actual physical body to a group of actual physical bodies for literally years. So this is very weird for me. In 2021, I had this tiny little book published in passing, and there was never any hoopla. So I'm going to read a few poems from this little tiny sweet book. And I think I'm going to start with this one because of the poem that we just heard and the mention of our lake. I moved to Hopkins, Minnesota exactly a year ago. And I live in a really sweet little area. It's all woods and hiking trails and lots of bodies of water. But what passes for a lake down there cannot hold a candle, much less the whole night sky, the way that our lake does. So this is a poem called Watching the Waves, which this kind of magic can only happen when you're by a great lake or a sea. Watching the waves, if you can wait enough, if you can stay a little longer than you'd planned, if you have practiced being still and empty, letting go of your words to make a space in you. You might say blue or silver, you might say shimmering or thundering or drum or evanescence or eternity when you are still at last, when you are wordless, waiting. You might feel the waters breathe, a breath that enters you as easily as light might fill even the darkest hollow. You don't have to clap because this is what happens to us. If you clap after one poem, then if you don't clap after another one, we get freaked out. So best not to clap at all. So as I got closer to 70, I decided that I would write a poem where I would just tell you everything that I have learned about living in the world and everything that I know to be true. So it's a poem that is a page and a half, which was surprising to me, but do pay attention because they are good things. Invitation. Walk out each day in every temperament of weather and choose one thing to save. Set it in the blue bowl of the heart or add it to the page. Be it a hawk, a frosted branch, a passing face, traces of warmth there or of wanting. Listen deeply. Be it a meadowlark, a creek, or someone's sorrow. Make of your listening an open field where wind-blown seeds take hold. Make of your listening a garden. Forgive someone. Notice how a tiny cage swings open deep inside you and a bird flies free. Always sleep beside an open window. Never draw the drapes or shut the shade, so that the moonlight and the owl's shadow sweep the bed. Keep the window open in all seasons, even in the winter, just a crack, so that while you sleep, you breathe the night, filling your body with 1,000,000 stars. You're not gonna clap? And this is just kind of a little add-on, and it's the last thing I've written, and I just wrote it, and I don't know if it makes any sense at all, but it makes that poem a little bit longer. And there were things I learned in the last year that I really did not have any interest in learning, but life isn't something locked within the body, marching its rounds, any more than the machinery of a clock is time. Life moves through us out into the world like air, like light, like music, and like love. So let your body be an open window. And in your dying, let your body be a seed pod. Poof, and you are everywhere. I actually feel nervous. Okay, how am I doing here? Okay. So I'm going to read 8 more poems. No, I'll read a couple more poems. There was a woman at my church who I never told her that she was my guide. Her husband had Parkinson's, as did my husband, but her husband was diagnosed before my husband by a couple of years, so I would watch her to learn how to be in that place. Becoming. The fragile hand of the woman in the pew rests on her husband's trembling arm, his rounded shoulder, narrow back, the ring on her finger catching the light. Green lingers in the trees, as if the leaves are reluctant to turn, but hover on the cusp of peach or rose, of rust or scarlet. A pause of breath between the known and the next. A hesitation, then the swimmer diving in becomes the water. We are becoming and becoming. Green lingers in the trees, as if the leaves are reluctant to turn. The calling of the loons across the bay echoes inside of us, echoes inside. And then I'm going to read a poem just in honor and gratitude for my dear women friends who I could not manage without. And in honor of young women like Brianna, who's here tonight. Woman, she has borne witness again and again, felt the ravaged earth beneath her feet and heard the children cry. She knows the way the dark can take the light without a warning. A candle snuffed out in a sudden gust, the whole sun plunging from the sky. She knows that what we hold won't last, be it a blossom or a body. She has borne witness again and again, and still her gracious face takes everything in, and still her arms are open and her hands. She has borne witness again and again, and still she rises. Thank you.
So we're gonna bring up Deborah Cooper. Sorry, thank you so much for your patience with my. I'm a little bit of a hummingbird today. It feels very exciting to be here with all of you today. Deborah Cooper's selected poet today, as you said a moment ago, is Rebecca Reynolds. So we're gonna invite her up here. Let's give some snaps. All right, thank you, Brianna. Sorry.
Okay. So before I begin reading my poems, I want to thank Deborah for inviting me out and giving me the opportunity to read in front of everybody tonight. I'm going to be reading 5 poems that I wrote last year in my poetry class, and then I don't want to give you guys the meaning of the poem. I want you guys to think about what it means to you and how you relate to it. The first poem I'll be reading is called Unseen. The first line was taken from Natalie Diaz's poem, American Arithmetic. I am begging, let me be lonely but not invisible. I spent my life bottled up and hidden like I was playing hide and seek, hiding from the beady eyes of the world which wishes to tear me down. Yet I seek the warm embrace of people I care for most. But being invisible is like dying, with no one there to say goodbye. I long to feel lonely, but I beg, do not let me be invisible. The next poem, I had taken inspiration from Joy Harjo's poem titled First Morning. It's titled Empty Pages. The first day without you is the day I began to mourn. The lack of your presence is turning pages of a blank book. My heart tears like paper as I hear those words, it isn't your fault. My tears fall like the plot of a book as it nears its end. Although I never got to hold you, I still carry you in my heart. You are a story never read, a book with blank pages that makes me wonder what your story would have been. Thank you. My next poem is called Spirit of an Eagle. I wrote it from inspiration of my friend. I had asked her what I should write about, and she told me to write about an eagle. And in my culture, being Native American, eagles are spiritual beings, so it's, yeah. When my time comes, I will gladly glide through the skies, holding my head up high. My friend, I'll watch over you and keep this from coming to an end. Always remember, my arms are spread wide, and you fill my heart with pride. I have the spirit of an eagle, and like our ancestors, I am your protector. My next poem's called Hope. My next poem's called Hope. I hoped one day I could meet you. I hoped one day I could cuddle your small body in my welcoming arms. I hoped one day I could protect you from this world, my arms shielding you from heartbreak and pain. I hope one day I can tell you just how much I love you. And then finally, I'm going to be reading a poem that was published in the Thunderbird Review. I wrote it on the 4th of July, and it's called Independence Day. This country is the ash and dust of my culture. How can you celebrate? How can you sit back, crack a cold beer? How can you watch your innocent children spin bright and colorful sparklers crackling in their tiny hands? How do you ignore facts? 7 schools in Canada uncover many bodies. They were only children. Almost 500 more schools and so much more to discover. The news stays silent. I can hear the president breathe. Churches ignore indiscretions, treat facts like rumors and stories. Was it mass murder? No, it was genocide. So I ask again, how can you celebrate a nation built on multiple generations? How do you ignore children deprived of chances to celebrate independence?
Come visit the tables. Thank you so much, everybody.